Hello, audience.
Hello, everyone, or someone, hopefully.
Yep, we've been having a chat, and it was not really. It was about my ex and my issues and how that relates to my child and so on. So I was not so sure about recording that all, but I think we can cap off the lessons that we covered on it and then move on to something else.
Just make it sound so much more intentional than it was. Just jump on the call and start ranting, and it's like half an hour in, and we go, "Oh, we probably should have recorded that."
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
because
most of it would have been okay. There was like one comment you made that I probably wouldn't say on the internet, but then again, if someone is going to say that on the internet, it'd probably be us with what we're trying to do here.
yeah.
Being honest and saying that we're a little messed up, like everyone else on the planet.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love that. I demand the right to be wrong. It's like
Mm,
you're wrong. Probably go away. I'm busy being wrong.
yeah. Yeah, it should be our banner on YouTube. We're still gonna make a logo.
Yeah,
I haven't done
yeah.
that yet.
I've got the tab for the guy on Fiverr open. It's been sitting there for ages. I need to get around to
Oh
it.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So what we covered. It's all started off because uh, she kept telling me about her life and the city she's in at the moment and about how much she's missing the old guy who she's set her heart on, and I'm just like, I would prefer to keep this about, or keep the messages between us about our son, or words to that effect. It's a single sentence, and she went off on this massive rant, which included things like, "You need to stop thinking I'm hitting on you," and uh, "I treated you badly and didn't let you get sleep because you treated me so terribly at the beginning." And it's like, after a while of thinking about it, it was like, that didn't come from me, that conversation topic, because she ranted all these things and I didn't reply to any of them. And it sort of knocked me mentally a bit because it's like, well, what? Where did that come from? And confusing. But then we were talking about it, and yeah.
So you need to just drop like a K. K dot.
Okay, still want to keep it about our son.
Yeah. Um
Yeah. And the
it was an interesting chat. Some good points, but
yeah.
we started getting into a discussion about prosperity
Yeah, yeah.
and figured we should start on that. We had a lot of good points to be honest.
Yeah.
Lost half hour.
I need to find a fiddle thing that doesn't make noise. Because I always have something in my hands to fiddle with during these conversations.
Fair enough. If we get a heads up, we might have an interruption in this show
And we
because
can.
I'm in the middle of a snowstorm
Oh,
here. So I might lose power. Um, and I've got, cell and battery as a backup, but still not ideal.
so if
Just as a heads
there's
up, it's cold.
ooh, yeah, if there's
It's very cold
a
here.
sudden cut off and the cell reception is lost, I'll say a quick outro and we'll pick up next time.
Oh, we'll have cell. Cell is independent power.
Ah,
I just, my internet and stuff would drop.
hmm,
But yes, snowstorm at the moment. It's cold,
hmm,
and I have no heater in this room.
yeah. So yeah, prosperity. It started off because that. How do I? No, I was just trying to say, how do I introduce this without sounding like a nutter? But oh well. Um,
That's this whole show, mate.
yeah. Um, Something that I've curiously looked at in steadily greater depth over the years. Not that I am looking at it now in what would be considered great depth, but astrology. It's like everyone just dismisses that as, oh, that's nonsense, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's a curious thing. Looking into it more, and it's like, oh yes, this bit explains this thing, and that makes sense. And would that mean this? And no, it doesn't work there. And the basic hypothesis behind it being that correlations were observed over the millennia, and added up over time into a body of law, but it's all just correlations were observed. And then those correlations were used to make predictions, which turned out to be moderately accurate, and then it was carried forward from ancient Babylon to the present. And there was a post that I read a while ago about a particular event that occurred when Saturn and Jupiter passed each other in the sky in the in a zodiac sign of a new element for the first time in 200 years, and it's like empirical correlations. Apparently, that ends up being significant. And so, this article, he went through the one that introduced the 200 years during which the Black Death occurred, and said, "Look, there is the thing indicating lots of death." And then looking at a few other ones, there it is not similar indication. And this particular one happened December 2020, and it was very interesting to look back at this article and say, oh yes, that thing about the media that he said, that the official media would become more under state control and less relevant.
I wonder what could have happened in December of 2020 to make, that happen with their media. I think we made a good joke about this last time, but I think it was after the recording. He started talking about Jesus as soon as the camera was off. It was great.
Oh yeah,
Great fun.
that there's a piece of law in the LORE sense that that great religious leaders are often born at the time of this grand conjunction, as they call it, and uh, they there's been speculation that Jesus was born on one because he's about the right time, uh, and so on. But the guy who was writing this article was saying maybe a religious leader of the next century was born then. Let's wait a couple of decades and see. And
Oh, that would be entertaining.
oh yeah,
Or close to some of my children's birthdays for my comfort. But that's okay.
yeah.
Definitely not a weird character at all. No, we were talking about, what was the other part? The other half of that was great prosperity for the masses.
Mm.
And you were sort of objecting to that.
Yeah. So this writer has written a number of books on the rise and fall of civilizations and looking at our present one through the lens of analyses of past civilizations. He dominantly takes a resource-based view of it, although it's more complex than that. There's social aspects too, but I haven't. I just bought one of his books on the subject, The Long Descent, A User's Guide to the End of the Industrial Age, the 10th anniversary edition. So it's been around for a while. And so I'm going to be rereading that sometime soon and bringing myself back up to date. But in this astrological analysis, a point that struck him as surprising was that certain things indicated that there would be prosperity for the masses during the next 200 years, as in masses in a better position than now. And it's like, what? How can that happen as oil goes away and so on? Well, if people need to start doing some of the jobs that machines are doing now, so there are more jobs to go around, and the population's going down, as is already locked in with the demographics, so there's less people to do the jobs, then the worth of labor goes up. And you were pointing out that change of wealth distributed by income bracket. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah. I was going through the elephant graph, which is effectively the statement that everyone is getting obscenely richer, especially not the absolute poorest of the poor, so starving Africans kind of thing, not really, little bit better, but not really, but the developing nations are booming off the charts. Most of them I probably couldn't name off the top of my head, but India's got a lot to do with that demographic. And then the poor in developed nations are minusing out at like 5%, and then the ultra rich are also up 100, 120, 130%, same as mostly everyone else. And we were having a discussion about, is it worth it?
Yeah, but then there's the dip between the Yeah, there's
Yeah,
the dip
but it's
between
a
the
very
super
shallow
rich.
dip. It's a very shallow dip.
Mm,
Hence the name elephant gruff. It's like this big fat body and then this tiny snaky trunk right at the end.
yeah. So I think you said the lower middle class in developed countries was going down at like 0.5% or a 5% per year, was it?
I I think it's 5%. I don't know if it's per year.
Hmm.
I don't think it's that extreme, but I think it's over the course of like 5 to 10 years, something like that.
Okay. While
But
the
real wealth's gone down about 5%, and everyone else has gone up about 100, 120.
yeah.
Um, with the obvious exception of the extreme poor, but they haven't lost at all. They're still going up, just slightly slower.
Hmm. Yeah. I'll have to look this graph
Um,
up. It sounds interesting. And then
yeah, I think it's also interesting that you made the point before about tying the prediction of general wealth increase to the collapse of oil and everything that's going on with that, which is going to be really interesting
hmm.
because we didn't make that connection in our pre-show conversation. There's so many economic forces at play there that it's hard to tell.
Hmm.
Your point about humans needing to do more work that machines used to, I assume that's tied into the lack of oil thing.
Yeah, well, if you don't have the well, if we look at history, recent history, you had a lot of the one that comes to mind is in I'm going to guess the 50s, 1900 to 50s, 1950s, say. There were a lot of secretarial jobs involving filing and organizing and storing and retrieving paperwork, which went away thanks to computers. And so the value of what was traditionally female labor dropped because that uh, work niche went away. And then if we've seen manufacturing, for example, think of production lines with the Model T Ford, the old videos of that, where you've got a team of guys at each station doing that stage of production, and then you look at a modern one and you've got 100 robots, and then there's one guy, and then another 100 robots, and then one guy, and so on. And the production leverage per unit of human labor has massively increased, but the value of the amount of human value, the wages provided has dropped off dramatically. Yeah, the value earned by humans in that chain has dropped off dramatically.
Okay. Oh, there's so many things at play there. Oh,
Oh, definitely.
let's trace it out because you can't connect a causal link between those things. The economic problem of why wages have gone down for our small part of the pie on the planet is like 15 factors
Mm.
that they all tie in. I don't know if we want to go through them
And
now, but
and some of them are an artificial
like
inflation of it previously.
yeah, like off the top examples, of course, Federal Reserve money currency printing, and then things like increased participation in the workforce from females, and decreased focus on child rearing and families
Mm.
for all people.
Yeah.
And then the whole education system problem of forcing everyone into higher education that devalues it.
Mm.
And then obviously the globalization problem of shipping over um, low skilled work to cheaper countries, which is what's making them rich,
Mm.
um, which isn't a bad thing. Um, yeah, it's not one that can be easily teased apart. But in terms of predictions of where things go from here, you have the same problem.
Mm.
It's like, okay, you can say the statement that there'll be less machines to do work that will need more humans to do as population declines. I don't quite see that connection
Well, there are
because I know you have
videos.
I know you have your thing about oil going away,
Mm,
but we are rapidly creating other energy solution systems. And the problem with every single one of those other energy solution systems is that we don't have enough minerals to do it for everyone on the scale that the Earth is now. But that's not going to be a problem if our population massively declines. The other thing that we're massively steamrolling towards is automation in every sense. And automation gives leverage to lower workers to do more work. I think one of the biggest problems of the declining population isn't going to be the lack of yeah, it's really hard to say that. The lack of work, because yes, there will be, but mm, the lack of demand for work, I think,
mm,
might be a bigger problem. That we might have all of these factories able for automation run by very few people and no one buying their goods.
mm.
We might end up in a situation where things start getting scrapped because no one's buying the
Oh,
Ford Model T or whatever.
already. Like there was a video I saw, the Chinese Tesla knockoff. I think they're called the BYD. Um, clips taken by drone of fields full of them, and the guy looks through the window. It's got 30k on the odometer. It drove out of the factory and drove into this field because there was a strong incentive from on high to have high sales and production numbers. So these things were bought somehow and then parked in this field
Yeah,
by the
there's an issue
thousand.
with command economy kind of
Yeah. Oh, and there
thing there,
was
but still.
some interesting things out of China recently that they updated their official demographic data. In the official numbers, the 0 to 5 age bracket for I think it was 2020 to 2025 was shown as a little over half the size of the 15 to 20 age bracket.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And if that's the official numbers,
Oh, that's bad. And we're not going to be any better.
I think we're on the same curve. Whether it's as steep or slightly delayed relative to China is a almost meaningless argument. It's the same curve. It's compounding reduction. And like the idea of China, one of the things in that video that I was part of the point behind that video being made was okay, what's the Chinese government going to do about it? Because they made the one child policy with um, forced late stage abortions if you were over your limit of children. And if you have a child outside the system, that is a non person who can never get an ID number, who can never get a driver's license or an official job or anything, and they're living under the table their entire life. Um, so that was the level they went to reduce the population. And now, if they get desperate, what level will they go to try and increase the population? Are we talking
Um,
forced
well,
insemination?
they're already doing that in Wuhan. No, no, sorry, not
Uh,
Wuhan. In oh,
the Uyghur
name escapes me.
Muslims?
There's so many genocides recently. The Uyghur camps.
Yeah,
Is it Shenzhen? Is that
that
the
sounds right.
yeah the district that produced that Disney movie recently. Um,
Ah, yeah,
yeah, they gave
special
special accommodation to the concentration camp guards in the credits. I don't remember which movie it was, but it was
Mulan.
really big, and everyone. Yes, that's the one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
lovely. Yes, they. Oh God, I don't even want to say it. They are taking the ethnic Muslims and as well as killing them and harvesting all of their organs and skin and stem cells for transplants. They're also forced aborting females and then enforced insemination them as well with Chinese nationals. Yay!
uh,
You're comfortable in your clothing. over there. Everyone listening, made by them. Oh, they also do slave labor for product creation as well before they go through that whole process.
Yeah,
Lovely.
yeah. Which
Yeah.
brings up a question I thought of previously and
Ray Russia's the
relates.
bad guy.
Yeah. You know how you talked about when you were younger, you saw the structure of reality through the fact that when you acted, when you did what was your best guess is what was right, when you followed your conscience, unrelated things went well. When you acted against your conscience, unrelated things went badly. Essentially karma.
Um, I wasn't that young, but yeah,
Yeah,
it was
I'm not sure.
rather recent. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But
Yeah.
yes,
The question that the curiosity that came out of that, the question was, did what was the relationship between the results of actions and the actions that you linked them to? Because you said that they were not necessarily obviously causally connected, but there would always be a consequence to the action.
it was time based.
Okay.
It was also a reaction to conscience too.
Hmm.
Like when it went wrong, when I violated the conscience and then something went wrong. That's interesting. When it went wrong, I knew every time that it was a direct result of me not listening to it.
Hmm.
When it went right, there wasn't the causal link.
Hmm.
So for the negative side, I could see the causal link. For the positive side, I couldn't. When I violated it in the wrong way, it would go wrong in the exact way that I would imagine that it would go wrong if I, got caught effectively. And every time if I did something by accident and didn't realize until it was too late, I wouldn't get caught. But if I knew ahead of time and had the conscience tell me, don't do this, and then I did it anyway or I ignored it, then I would get caught every
Hmm.
time. And the inverse was when I had that thought and I went, you know what, I will do it. I will follow the conscience. And I went and did it. I would get no direct reward from that thing, but something else in my life, completely separate, would suddenly go right where it was going wrong before.
Hmm.
And that's the best I got. Like,
Yeah.
I can't make a causal link for that side.
The way that I have heard the action of karma described was I'm trying to think up a scenario to describe it. If you cheat at cards in gambling and cheat someone out of some money, then you set yourself up to experience the other side of that. Or if you uh, cause someone else misfortune by your negligence, you set yourself up to receive misfortune caused by someone else's negligence. And I'm wondering if there was any kind of link like that you could see where the results were almost what happened to the other person. So the results that you got were related in some way to what happened to the other person when you acted, to positive or negative.
I can't, no, I can't agree with that.
Mm.
I feel like maybe occasionally on the positive side,
Mm.
but it feels like it feels rare
Mm.
compared to, because on the positive side, most often it was something like doing due diligence, doing the thing that I know I should do, that's right to do, that if I don't do, no one's going to catch me, kind of thing.
Hmm.
And then it wasn't like something would just, because I was never in a position to be on the other end of some kind of transaction like that. I didn't
Hmm.
have work people work for me, or it wasn't like finding money on the street or anything like that, although that did happen. No, there was never any symmetry, justice kind of thing in it.
Okay.
It
Okay.
was pure and simply on the negative side. I heard the voice in my head saying, "You shouldn't do this. If you do, this is going to go wrong." And then if I ignored it, it would go wrong in the exact way that it told me it would ahead of time.
So it's almost like paying into a account positive or negative and then receiving the same value of positive or negative returned. So the net value in the account remained constant, even if you didn't get out the same dollar you
No,
put in.
no, I wouldn't get back as much positive interactions as I would do, but I would get paid out in the negative every time.
More in the negative? As
Yes.
in, okay, so if you did.
Like whenever,
Hmm.
any single time the voice ever said, "Don't do this," and I did it, I got it in the neck for that
Hmm.
every time. But when I heard that voice and I went, "Fuck, you're right," and then did it, I wouldn't always get a reward for it.
Hmm.
But every now and then I would, and it would be something significant.
And trying to quantify all that's difficult.
I feel like the rules were not decided by me and were not meant to be understood by me. Because if they were, then I would gain it.
That makes sense.
Or I would have
Hmm.
previously.
It's almost as though there's some level of consciousness behind it.
Yeah. God, how can you imagine that? In this dead materialist universe. How did we get onto that? I feel like you were leading somewhere. Is it just on your mind?
Ah, the Chinese treatment of the Uyghur Muslims and
Uh,
their what are they lining up for themselves as a group? Because it's like if you do something as an individual, you get the negative back on you. If a group does something together, then
well, they're getting pretty communist pretty fast. And the last time a large scale power did that, it didn't go so well for their citizens. And it's
yeah.
already not going very well for the citizens.
And how much of that
And
karma? How?
guards don't escape that system.
Yeah.
It's not pleasant for them either, and very often they'll get dragged down too.
Yeah. So how much does wearing the clothes made in that place put on your lap? I suspect as much as you know about. If you go to the shop and buy the cheap clothes because they're cheap and you don't know about the harm caused, then
Yeah,
you get the action
I
of,
wonder about those. I really do wonder about that sometimes.
hmm, well, that would be ignorantly causing harm, but then there's willfully causing harm, knowing the harm that you're causing, which is a very different beast. And if you know the blood and pain that went into making the clothes and choose to ignore it, then
Okay.
I
The
feel like,
problem is
yeah,
there's a really big problem here for all who are listening who are having the anxiety of like, oh my god, am I evil for like, okay, yes, we buy our clothes from a borderline Nazi state.
hmm,
Not everything in that country is made in slave shop factories.
hmm,
That's the real problem. There is legitimate high end factories where all of the staff are treated really well and paid well, and there's
hmm.
also literal concentration camps of people working on products,
Oh God,
and both of them are just labeled "made in China."
yeah,
That
yeah,
doesn't absolve, But
Because the Chinese labor laws of how businesses treat their employees in terms of hiring and firing and relative benefits, from what I hear, are not that bad. It's not every citizen's a slave. It's like the citizens of China have some power on their side. Everything's in a very different shape to what we're used to. So we see something that's worse than here, and we don't see other things and how things sometimes balance out. And it's a different
it's been
culture.
drummed up a bit much.
Mm,
It's been drummed up quite a bit by the whole suicide nets stuff. People
mm,
want to target companies like Apple and be like, "Oh, look at what you're doing is evil." You know, you're only paying these people $3 an hour, and then you go and interview the person. They're like, "Thank God, I used to be getting $1 an hour, and now my family's not starving."
yeah.
Like, you know, that country went from everybody starving to most people, have a phone, and most families have a car.
Mm,
That's good. And that's because we buy shit from them. It's such a hard thing because okay, if we all boycotted China, their citizens would start starving again.
mm,
And their government's not gonna feed them. They're gonna do what communists always do, or authoritarians in general. They're gonna roll up with the guns and take all of the food for themselves.
mm,
That's not better. But at the same time, your made in China t-shirt had, taxes taken from it during manufacturing. And those taxes are going to guards who are doing obscene things to Uyghurs in concentration camps, which I almost said again, but I really don't want to. Uncomfortable.
yeah. I guess there is no situation where we don't have blood on our hands.
Yeah,
Every single population pretty much either held or took the place they have in the world through some form of war.
yeah.
They either defended it by killing or took it by killing, and trying to go back through history and even out all the injustices of the past is a road to madness.
Yeah, there was a really good speech from a video game I played recently about that. Some evil dictator was, enslaving his country to get rich. The reporter goes to him and is all acting all offended. And he starts doing the modern liberal thing of like listing off all the evil stuff that the West has done. And what's the question? He says, "What do you call that?" And she's like, "It's a history lesson that's pointing the blame." He's like, "No, it's a head start. When I bring my product to the world, no one will give a shit how many people died to make it. They'll care what it does. No
Hmm.
one cares." The whole point wasn't, "Oh, you guys are evil and we're better." He's like, "No, I'm just as evil as you." And that's just the way the game is played. You don't get to make yourself the richest country in the planet by being really evil and then all of a sudden turn around and go, "No one else can do the evil thing."
Hmm.
Because now we're top dog and we want the world to be moral. And his point was, no, you know, you guys got a head start with your slavery and prison industry things. And we didn't.
Hmm.
And now you're coming at us, grumping us because we have slavery and prison industry. How terrible. I don't agree with that sentiment, by the way. I do like the idea that there's a world power who's telling everyone to behave properly, but also making everyone obscenely rich. This has really annoyed me. I've been conservative for a long time, kind of pro nationalism, pro states, pro sound money, against the Federal Reserve and all this kind of thing. Because these institutions have fucked the working class in our countries for a long time. But looking at it now, it's really, I'm getting a very difficult, or
Hmm.
what I would have once considered a devil's advocate position. the Federal Reserve has done a lot of good in the world.
Hmm.
Yeah, they got rich off the back of it, but we started this talking about making the poor richer, alleviating poverty, connecting people to the power grid, stopping them from dying of malnutrition. Like the death rates of malnutrition have dropped from like 45% to like 5 worldwide in the last, I don't know, 100 years or so, less than.
Hmm.
And a majority of that is the globalization efforts that are destroying, you know, a lot of local small town industries in rich countries, and the money printing problems, and the petrodollar, and the trade agreements, and all the stuff that is bad. But without that, globalization grinds to a halt. And as much as I'd love, sound money, gold for everyone kind of situation, a lot of the times these big prints that they're doing, they're giving to other nations who are developing, and they're not charging them interest. So they can kickstart their development. So they
Hmm.
can invest in tractors and fertilizer and GPS systems and cell towers. They couldn't do that. You're gonna go full free market and charge them interest on that shit and debt other countries to you.
I feel like,
It's it's not as simple as it
yeah,
once was.
when you pull it back to the individual, the the way it seems to work, as you experienced, is it's not a like in that TV show, The Good Place, where they made a comedy. Okay, so I haven't watched it, but I watched some clips because they were vaguely interesting. As far as I could tell, the plot was a group of people end up in. Oh, it's one of those convoluted plots with resets in the middle, but people going to heaven or hell is being decided by the total net good. So, eating, well, buying a shirt made in China, you would get a appropriate portion of all of the slavery that went into that on your tab, and then all the good you do would go on, and no one was getting into heaven, which they just called the good place, because of not thinking things through well enough, was the logic given. They just need to do their research. And I don't think that's how the world works as we experience it. I think that, and I've certainly been there and hated myself over those harms and so on, but I think that you try your best. You look at things and you follow your conscience and do a thing. And it basically comes down to, did you try and make it, did you try and do the right thing and put a bit of effort into it? Did you climb up or did you go down? And if you're going up, then it's good. And if you're sliding down and making things worse, then it's bad. And it's not about how much of the suffering in the world you're contributing to. It's, did you make a you-sized piece of it a little bit better?
Yeah. Or
And it,
better than you could have made it worse.
yeah, yeah. And we each have our conscience as a little guide of how to act. And I think sometimes we can over confuse our consciences too.
Mm. And you can certainly corrupt them.
Yeah, but it's like, look at the world at your feet, not half a world away. It's like, certainly if you think that there is an action to take that is better for half a world away without making it worse here, because you can see the change it makes here, you can't see the change it makes half a world away. Like, you can buy a free trade coffee or chocolate or whatever, and it's like, okay, you think that makes a difference. You can donate to a charity, World Aid or something, and you think that's making a difference, and that can make your conscience feel better. But in the organizations that money goes to, how many first class trips are the high level people in those charities taking? How much of what you give actually ends up making a difference at the location where the aid's meant to be spent? And how much of a difference does that actually make? Like the feed a man, give a man a fish, he's fed for a day. Give a man a net, give him the means to feed himself. He's fed every day until his net breaks. Type thing. It's like, are you by giving aid to people, are you impoverishing them of their ability to feed themselves? But then are you uh, also helping them to get a leg up so they can get moving? And it is so complicated, you just can't know.
Mm.
And like, how many billions of dollars of aid have been given to lots of countries on the bottom? And just like, okay, well, that doesn't seem to be the thing that's been pulling them up. It's like, sure,
It's
it's
made it
helped in some
worse in a lot of
places.
cases.
Yeah, and you can't see the distant effects you have. You can see the near effects you have. And there are people who are at the interface between the distant and the near who can try and make their bit better. And if everyone tries to make their bit of the world a bit better, then it will get better. But you can't. We are not omniscient. We do not see the whole world and all the impacts of our actions, fundamentally. And so the best we can do is, as your lessons from your conscience was teaching, it seems, act the best you can here. Like in permaculture, they talk about, okay, where do you start in making the world a better place with a garden? How do you start your gardening? It's like, okay, go to your back step, your back door step. There, right there, not the far edge of the property or even your kitchen windowsill. Like, start right in the middle. It's another restating of the tidy your bedroom concept of start where you have the most power to act and make that a bit better. And then you'll reach out and make another bit better, and then you'll see something else right in the middle that you could make better. And don't think that you have to aim for the moon. You just need to aim one step in front. And if you keep doing that, like, if you keep not making it worse, that's better. And if you don't know what to do, don't make it worse. If you're in a catch-22, take your best guess with the intent to make things better. Act with that, knowing that you thought about it and thought, I'm an idiot, I don't know what I'm doing, this will probably backfire, but this is the best guess I've been able to come up with as an idiot trying to make his way in the world. I'm going to do this thing. Oh, that backfired. Well, at least I know that I was trying to make it better as much as I'm able to not lie to myself. It's like, yeah, work on something where you can see the benefit. Like, and everyone feels the things that are most ready for their attention. Like, it's, how did Jordan Peterson describe it? It's the things that need attention call out to you. They make themselves known to you. It's not that you
If
have
you're
to.
willing to look at them.
Yes, yes, and that can be hard. That can be so hard.
And it's often a lot easier to try and fix the biggest problems in the world.
Because you know you're
You
not
make
going to make a
yourself,
difference.
yeah. And no, because it feels like you're doing the right thing.
Hmm.
It's the virtue signaling problem. I'm moral. I'm trying to save the African children.
Yeah.
Like, okay, one, you have no idea what you're trying to do over there. Two, you're probably making it worse, which you are actually, because most of your money is going to the government that is keeping them poor, so that they
Hmm.
can keep receiving the aid money. And the other point is exactly what you said. The center, each person is the center of their world.
Hmm.
And your knowledge of the world radiates out from there.
Hmm.
If you want to make the world better, you need to act where your knowledge is effective. And as you get further and further out into the greys, the percentage errors go up massively, and you're likely to do more harm than good. The place where you know what you can do the best is right here.
Hmm.
And that's the suffering of the individual is the center of existence, which is Christian for those who didn't know. That's what the cross means for everyone else. You can't set out to solve the biggest problems in the world because you're not God, you're not Gandhi, you're not some magnificent angel who could do everything right perfect if only they had the power.
Well, even the figures we hold up so high, like Gandhi, like I'm thinking of like one of his big acts of rebellion against the British was he went to the beach and made salt, knowing that it was illegal because that was a law that had been imposed as a form of control. You were not allowed to make your own salt, which was take seawater and dry it. And he walked out there in his bare feet and made some salt. And that was an act of rebellion. That was not making this great intricate plan. That was, this is a thing that we are required or prevented. This is a thing that we are prevented from doing. That law is wrong. I am going to
And it was
go.
local.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to walk on my feet and break that law. I'm not going to have a grand plan. It's like, oh,
Yeah, you
Nelson
didn't try and
Mandela.
change the laws halfway around the world. It wasn't trying to break the salt breaking laws in, Oakland or
Mm,
whatever. He was in his town and he broke it in his town where the restrictions were.
mm. Yeah, and like, oh, the people who was it you telling me about someone went to a black community in the States and said Biden has signed a thing for this many $1 million or $1 billion to go to your community, probably in the millions. And they were all excited about this. And so I was like, so what do you need? Oh, we need this. We need more police. We need this thing. We need to get those gangsters off the streets. We need a so on, so on, so on. All these things that they thought would make their life better. And it's like, okay, well, Biden has decided to spend it on an electric bus charging station. Everyone swears and walks off because that's not going to help.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and it's the yeah to make it better. Go and put a smile on a child's face. Like, what would put a smile on a child's face? That's probably something that would be making the world better. And
And
frankly,
then there's the second part of it that Peterson goes into as well,
mm,
which is once you've made it good, try and make it beautiful. You don't then breach, once you've finished your
mm,
ordering your house, you don't then go and try and order your neighbor's house.
mm,
You go, well, this is working and it's functional and it's not bad. How about I also make it beautiful?
mm,
That's the next step. The next step isn't the next door neighbor's house or every house in your community because you're now good enough to be, governor or whatever. You got to lead by example and it has to be local. And if your solution to the world requires power to enforce, then you're not trying to solve the world. You're trying to acquire power.
mm,
That's what it is. You know, the angel who saves the world is someone who does it without power. The person who stands up and says, I could save the world if only I had all the power. One, you're not an angel. You actually just want the power. And two, even if you were, you'd be shot immediately and had the power taken from you by someone a lot worse than you. It's not how it works. You have to make things better where you can make them better. There's no other option.
mm.
Power corrupts. It doesn't matter how good you are. Second you get into that arena, you're not doing good in the world. which is why my ambitions to become a politician when I was younger faded very quickly. I'd be effective, but people would not like me.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how oh, those effects that look so small can multiply up. That
Oh,
like Gandhi was one man. The strength he had was not in his superiority or his well, he had conviction. He was indomitable, but the strength he had was what he inspired those around him to do. Like one guy on his own can do one thing, and they can probably do it faster than if they were working with other people. If it's a single person sized thing. What's the quote? I think it's an African quote. If you want to go far, go alone. If you want to go. No, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. You can go fast on your own, but you won't get as far. You can go together and you can just keep walking. And then as
mm.
the generations cycle through, you can keep walking for generations. And oh, like the guy who I talked about, I think last time, uh, who was very, very concerned about the declining birth rates and described as a pronatalist and wanted to have 10 kids. And I don't know if I'd go that far personally, but he was talking about how children were leaving the communities they grew up in, which implies there's something missing. Like, and he talked about there being a sort of mind virus, a meme in the Richard Dawkins sense, which was which oh, the far left type political attitude, which seems to socially sterilize a lot of the people with it. So because and we see that and think that that's what's occurring because we look at the birth rates based on the politics, and it's way down in certain areas of the political spectrum. The point being that if you want to make a change, it has to be one that makes people's lives better, that they will then carry forward themselves, and that their children will carry forward. And if you can
And
get,
you can't play a degenerating game.
yeah, yeah, it has to be a game that builds up. And if you can make a change that gets someone else to make a change, like I'm thinking of the job I'm working on at the moment, like we're busily designing mechanisms behind the scenes and things to do all sorts of things on the steam tractor. And if it all goes as well as we hope it can, we could make a big difference, but it won't be because one person went all the way themselves. It'll be because one person had some ideas and had other people found people who would support that idea, and he worked away at it. And like he's driving it. I don't think we could do it without him, but everyone there is doing their little bit and thinking, yes, we can make this work and move this forward, and we really think it can make a difference. And it won't make a difference because of us. It'll make a difference because someone sees, yeah, that would make a difference for my community. Having an emergency generator like that would really make a difference, or would have made a difference um, in the last disaster of whatever kind hit. It's not about what you can impose to make things better in your eyes. It's how much you can give people the power to make their own lives better. Yeah. It's not about how much better you can make things. It's about how much you can give people the power to make things better.
Tools,
Yeah.
both literal and metaphorical.
Mm.
Probably more metaphorical than literal, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Because Like, we're not going to have a massive production facility for these. We're going to be licensing out the production, trying to hold on to some level of IP control because the business has to actually be profitable in order to move forward and make a difference. But like licensing out production to, okay, you want a bunch of these in Mozambique. Okay, let's hire a local shop to start manufacturing them. And so on, and license out the production there, or in a Pacific Island or something if they want a whole bunch. If it's a few here and a few there, sure, we might produce those somewhere and ship them, but yeah, give people the tools to make things better. And the world's constantly evolving, so the old tools don't work anymore. We need to we it's that revivification that you've talked about before.
Yeah, I was
The
just going to say that's what we were talking about the other time about the old tools falling apart in terms of philosophy and religion.
hmm,
We need new ways of viewing the world and structuring our behavior in the world. This is the whole problem with our entire generation. We
yeah,
all grew up and we all stood around and looked at each other and said, "How am I supposed to live? What am I doing? What's moral? Tell me what's moral. Someone." And then all of our parents were like, just
yeah,
I don't know. Be yourself. Go live your life. And we're sitting there going, what does that mean?
yeah.
I don't, and then we go to church. We laugh at everyone there. They don't know what they're talking about. They're only good because their parents raised them to be good. And then they believe the thing and it has nothing to do with why they're good. It's that, I don't remember what it was. It was the decay of godly man to slave. And like one of the steps along the way was like practical man, which is like does all the things that the godly man does, but doesn't actually understand why they're valuable or important and doesn't believe the thing.
There
And then
was
his kids don't do them anyway because it's even one step removed.
yeah. So I think it's a self-reversing process. Be-
Yes, it is.
and
It's an up and down cycle.
a sign of that reversal, there was an article written by same guy who wrote The Long Descent, that I was reading recently. What did he call it? I was just looking it up. Uh, Beyond Thermatophobia, Part 1, A Door into Springtime. So I'm not sure if he made up this word, but themato comes from the Greek word for miracle or wonder, and phobia is obviously fear of, but he talks about thematophobia versus or thematophobic versus thematophile. So someone who is attracted to wonders versus someone who's terrified by them. And he talks about Naomi Wolf, was it one of the few journalists who responded to the COVID-19 phenomena by doing what journalists are theoretically supposed to do and asking hard questions about the party line forced by government and corporate flex.
Goes so well for her.
Sorry?
It went really well for her. Yeah.
Yeah, following the truth and following her conscience. Yeah, who'd have thought that'd work?
Yeah. It was also like viciously horrible for her at the same time.
Oh,
But
yeah.
persecuted or blessed, all of that.
Yeah. So where was it? She talked in a recent article she wrote about how the comforting, dull materialism of the rest of her life is gone. That through the experience of watching the whole COVID situation, she came to the conclusion that basically there is good and evil in the world, and that the metaphysical has to be real because of what she was watching happen, the apparent insanity of certain things that she was seeing happen. And the you talked about the godly man going to the practical man. Um, she seems to be going back in the godly sense, not by any sort of "I've found God again," but it's like, "Oh God, it's real" type thing.
I've seen a lot of people like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd say I'm one of them, to be honest. I had a similar reaction. Like we talked about this before, but it became from the deep state, black budget kind of Pentagon takeover things.
Hmm.
And it's the same kind of thing of the discovery of good and evil. And once you truly discover that, like the evil side of evil, I don't think that you can live without a metaphysical framework.
Hmm.
There's no way to look at evil the way that evil is and be like, no, it's just people. And okay, there's no way to do that and not simultaneously break and possibly leave the planet,
Hmm.
which people do all the time. But sometimes I wonder about people who are raised with it if they believe it more, if they even if they understand it less.
The metaphysical side.
Yeah, I wonder what that would feel like.
It feels
Mm.
like it's the number of different viewpoints that people impress on their children as they're growing up. Um, like my son recently, what was it? He had the question of why did God make us this way in the arms and legs sense? Yeah, why
Oh,
do we
okay.
have arms and yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
gonna say, oh,
Well, my response was that's a very, very complicated question, and a lot of adults have argued about it. I think this, you'll need to make up your own mind as you grow up.
that's a really surprising question from your son.
Why don't we have fur was the way I mentally summarized it. Why are animals the way they are and we're different?
Okay, but the God thing really throws me. I
Oh,
wasn't expecting that out of your child. Is he at a religious school or something?
church on Saturdays when he's with his mum's parents.
Okay.
So he learns about
Mm.
Jesus there, and I say, yes, and then there's Apollo and Thor and all the rest.
Well, I think part of my upbringing is rebelling against that, but no, I think it's good. It's it should be one of the classes the same as the rest.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I wish I could have attended university in the days where the entire university was nestled underneath the theology department.
Hmm.
What a day that would be.
Yeah.
As a note, theology back then was not what it was now. You know, science of evolution was studied under them for quite a long time.
Hmm.
Same with, physics and mathematics and chemistry and every other hard science. And they were all nestled in the idea that there are laws of the universe created by God, therefore we must find them.
Hmm.
And none of this sort of everything's interpretation shit existed.
Yeah.
It was all hard tax business of we need to figure out what the hell's going on because there is a truth, because there's a God.
And that sense of meaning and sight into divinity that comes from seeing the way things work.
Yeah. I also would have just loved to talk to them
Hmm.
and picked their brains to I'd love to talk to someone who is, you know, top tier intellectual, 140 to 160 IQ, who is in a theology department.
Hmm.
That'd be fascinating because, quite frankly, I've heard one person in my entire life who is Christian and who seemed to have a high IQ. I'm not even counting Peterson for that. I feel like he's his own thing. And every other one, I'm just sort of like going, okay.
You're just repeating a party line.
Yeah, yeah. I asked you a question that you should know, even you should know, and you don't. And that's okay. Yes, you repeat. Yep. Say the thing again. Yes, thank you. Makes me remind. There was a comedy special. It reminds me of. I prayed very hard, and the fairy came. Did he good? Have a biscuit. I'm not. And it's like, that's nice. Okay, thank you. I feel so stimulated, and I love the world so much more for having talked to you. But occasionally there are others who are genuinely intelligent, and it's interesting to have a conversation. But regardless of whether they're intelligent or not, they believe in the world and they care about people and they care about doing the right thing.
Hmm.
And that's more valuable than being a smart guy who would fuck over other people,
Hmm.
which is most of everyone else, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. There was something I came across recently. What was it? Okay, the Freemasons, to take a detour, but um they use biblical references, and you can trace them back supposedly to the Crusades, but at least they're descended from church-aligned groups, and so there's a lot of biblical references and uh, so on. But I found something recently that described their attitude towards the Bible as this book describes good ways of acting. Right? This is
Mm,
a good instruction manual for practical life. The theological and metaphysical questions are an entirely separate thing. Like, I think the only thing that you need in a religious sense to join is, can you um, agree to the existence of a supreme being? Like, entirely undefined what that is. A supreme being, for me, that would be like the universe as a conscious entity. It's like, well, yeah, yeah, that seems the most supreme being. And then they would use the word God to refer to that supreme being. And that interpretation of the Bible is a rather different one to what you get in so many other forums like churches, where it's more, this is the literal truth that you must follow. And it's like, okay, how does that play out? Let us assess that approach on its merits. And then you get a whole lot of people saying that the world's 6,000 years old and evolution doesn't apply to humans or didn't happen at all, and arguing about God of the gaps. It's like, okay, okay, I feel like there's something being applied backwards here. A principle that's
they
not,
played they played to the lowest common denominator.
in terms
That's
of
it.
interpretation of the Bible itself.
Yeah, they wanted to reach everyone,
Hmm.
especially the stupid. So they decided to play to the lowest common denominator and alienated everyone who had any modicum of intelligence.
Hmm.
And then the church became a mockery of itself. Like, no one ridicules them better than themselves at this point.
Yeah, it's like the. I think the thing that started me down that uh, mental detour was you're talking about talking to Christians and they would give the stock answer, and it's like,
Mm.
rather than the world being a meeting of beings, like if you go back 1,000 years, what was it? I think in the description I read it was St. Francis of Assisi. I'm pronouncing that wrong. Who was used as the example, but he, what was it? Preaching to the birds. It's like, okay, that would imply that he felt they had some ability to comprehend. He wasn't just speaking at them; he was speaking to them to try and preach to them as some level of conscious being. And it was a relatively common thing, or a universal thing, a cultural norm, to see the sun as a conscious element of God's creation, and see the world as a conscious community within which humanity participated, as opposed to this is the rule set. This is the dogma of how things are. Learn these answers to the common questions and how to handle odd questions, and go forth and preach that answer set, as opposed to here is a study guide. Here are some outlines to get you started to help you
Oh,
work towards contact with the divine and the community that we're within.
wow, that's rough. That means that they actually don't believe in God anymore.
They believe in the words, not the being.
No, they become yes, they become an ideology
Hmm.
to the point of we know everything. The
Yeah.
whole point is do not usurp the transcendent. Worship no other idols than me. Don't build towers of Babel. And now they're sitting here going, we know everything there is to know about God, and therefore we know all the answers, and therefore there's no unknowns, and we don't need to be curious anymore.
There was,
All they've become is
yeah,
another political ideology with an answer to every question.
in that book on polyistic theology that I'm slowly working my way through, he talks about um, modern monotheist dogma. Was it modern monotheist attitudes being to judge experience based on dogma? So it's like, okay, you had this experience that you can't explain, which could be anything from a um, apparently significant coincidence all the way up to I've met God and he shook me by the shoulders and said, change your life, which some people have to that intensity, but everything in between, right? You had an experience, right? And then, let us hear about this experience and compare this with the cheat sheet here we've got in this big book of, okay, does it line up with according to this, it appears that your experience was actually not God but a devil or something, and it's like just
That's
because it didn't line up
pure
right.
ideology.
Yeah, it's judging experience based on dogma, whereas the modern polytheist religions, it is exactly the opposite round. It's like, here's the things we think are true. You had an experience that differs. Oh, we must update. And yeah, quite the opposite
Because
of
you're
yeah.
exploring again.
Mm.
The church has become, like you say, it's rigid, it's solidified, and it can't talk to the rest of the world because of that.
The divine
It's
became the
becoming
practical.
and it's they no longer worship the unknown, the
Mm.
transcendent unknown, the unknowable unknown God. They think that they've encapsulated it.
It's
They
more than
go,
can be
we have
contained
it.
in a book, any book.
Yeah, we have this book, therefore we know God. We know God.
Mm.
Like that line that they always say, we know God loves us. Maybe. You don't know. He could hate you for all you know. It's the point is that you don't know. The point is you keep reaching for what is right. And that's why I think I can say that the people in which you reference in this new polytheist community are far more godly than most Christians
Mm.
because they have a relationship with the divine. A relationship is a relationship with a moving entity, an unknown partially and
Mm.
partially known. If the entity you have a relationship with you think is fixed and defined, and that you know all of it, how can you know everything there is to be known about God without also usurping him? You can't place yourself beneath something you perceive to be encapsulated and understood by you. You can't do it.
Or even
If
if
you understand him, then you are above him.
even if you don't, hang on a minute. Yeah, that doesn't mean you understand every facet of that being. It's just that
Claim to.
you have the outlines. You say he acts within these bounds and according to at least these rules. So you can
Well, if you
mentally.
always have to refer back to the existing structure and that exceptions to the structure are cast out, not the structure cast out,
Mm,
then therefore the structure is referenced as the defining thing, more important than any direct experience of God or transcendent unknown.
mm,
Therefore, the God of the Christian religion is the structure, not the actual God.
mm.
They
There is.
worship that dogma,
Mm,
not the being in which the dogma is attempting to reference.
I feel like the defense of that would be that God is eternal, as in exists outside time, and therefore wrote the Bible to be applicable for all times. But that feels like there's a logical fallacy in there somewhere, or a difference in interpretation.
Yeah, it's also convenient.
Hmm.
The
Does it
this book
match
was
with
literally
reality?
written by God, therefore you can't argue with it.
And any other book that claims to have been written by a god or God in some other
Or
form.
any experience you have in your life that does not conform to the document
Hmm.
is therefore heresy.
And the fact that the document says it's true means it's true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then there's the other half of that is that the dogma and the document are actually different. They
Hmm.
worship the dogma and not the document. Like that thing I keep referencing, sitting in church and reading the page and then looking at them, disobeying the direct words, and then reading the page again.
Yeah.
I make my
Oh.
wife do it now. It's really entertaining. She started like turning to me and saying the words to me while we're sitting in the back of church. I'm like, yep, that's exactly right. Thank you very much.
Oh, there was something someone's putting up videos on YouTube where he's going back to the original meanings in the Hebrew and looking at the way it's interpreted these days and saying, yeah, that's not that's not what it meant.
Yeah, it's gonna be entertaining. That I should look it up.
Yeah, things. I'll send them to you next time he pops up. But oh, what was one that he came up with recently? There were like the God made woman as a helper to, or Eve as a helper to Adam. It's like, okay, you can
Yeah,
look back and it's more like, um, oh, what was it?
beneficial adversary.
No, well, that I
The
think
one
that
that I
was
had.
one of them, but there was like multiple potential interpretations of old words, like
Mm,
deliberately layered interpretations, not just there's one right and a bunch of wrong ones. It's like they're all right in some way. You got to think about it.
that
Um,
would be nice, actually, if English still held that, because that's the point. The way the book is written is that it has many different interpretations on many different layers, and in some sense, all of them are true. But English people read it and they're like, no, it means the one thing,
there
what it
was,
says.
I think that was it. It was something along the lines of desperately needed helper, like not just someone who came along to give you a hand, like the person who came along to pull you out of the quicksand of death. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, there's a hell of a difference between that form of helper and the other form. It's
yeah, there was
and
something about being essential. I think
yeah, yeah.
I remember, but I remember the beneficial adversary was the thing. Not like when we read helpmeet, we think like, oh, it's just another cow for him to milk kind of thing. Like,
Hmm.
no, 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 no. The point was she's on his side, but she's fucking hostile to him, and she saves his life all the time. And sitting here going, yeah, that sounds like women. Like exactly what we needed, and exactly a pain in the ass in the way that we need.
Oh, there was another one was curse you to always agree with your husband or something, or follow your husband. It's like, no, it's more like always disagree when you look at the original meaning of it.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that sounds about right.
yeah, and the other one that was made from a rib, but when you look at the word used there, it's more like side. So there are some
Yeah, out
churches
of
where,
his side,
yeah,
like it's part of yeah,
yeah,
part of you, but also coming from the side.
well, some churches describe it as God split Adam in half, and one became Eve, and the other became
Mm.
Adam. And so was he a
Well,
hermaphrodite
there's
before
that
then,
other that
or neither?
hermaphrodite idea, the original one that the original Adam was both male and female, which is why it was um they created them
Hmm.
in the translation. Because there's the two restatements of it. One is, he, God, created him, Adam, and then the other one is we created them like us, as a
Hmm.
statement from God, which is a statement of Adam before the split is hermaphroditic, and so is God, by the way.
Hmm.
And of course, that's, pure heresy. But then that ties into the whole thing we started the show with, which was the bond of marriage.
Hmm.
And then back to the statement of I think humans may be single bonding creatures or mate for life, depending on how you want to talk about it. And the idea behind marriage is that the separate entities are reuniting together, two halves of one whole, to become what they were meant to be
Hmm. I think
in the first place.
in ancient Greek myth, that's described as the gods fearing the power of humans who were two-headed, four-armed, and four-legged creatures, and so they split them in half, and your life is a search for your other half. And if you can find your other half and unite with them again, then your power together could be such as to cause gods to fear. Possibly not individually,
Mm,
but collectively. But
I like that. It calls
yeah.
for the divine unity, because a lot
Mm.
of the marriage language, particularly in the Bible, is about before marriage, you're very fleshly, you're just a being, like a
Mm.
materialist. And then the idea is that once you are married, you together, not you alone, are divine now. You
Mm.
are what you are meant to be.
Yeah, it is the together that's important, not the one plus one. It's
Yes.
not even the two.
Yeah.
It's the one that results from the two.
Yeah. You're subservient to the bond,
Mm.
the
And
the unity.
YouTube's got the hang of, or realized that I'm looking up relationship stuff a lot, and the
Boy,
not.
do they love to recommend that.
Oh yeah, yeah. But there's a rabbi that comes up every now and again that someone's putting up shorts of relationship advice from it. An old grey bearded rabbi, and like, oh, what was it? He talked about intimacy. Like, obviously, there's sexual intimacy, which is overdone in modern culture to a large degree.
Yeah. You say
To
that
yeah,
again.
yeah.
Yeah.
But he talked about the true form of intimacy in love between a man and a woman leaves you feeling more innocent, not less. And it's like
It
that.
it feels holy.
Yeah, yeah. It's not
I
a loss of
I
innocence
almost
or
yeah, I almost disdain using that word, but it feels pure,
mm,
clean. And as a married man, I can say that there are times when we can do things that don't feel clean.
mm,
Like, yeah, there's that part. But there are times when we can do things that feel, I don't know, they feel almost godly, even though they're not what's, yeah, it's weird. And on the intimacy thing, I think number one thing of advice is always there should be no barrier or secret
mm,
in a partnership. It makes
yeah,
me think of what you said earlier about you starting to just not say what you had to say and sort of ignore her complaints or withhold your own. And that statement is like, right, it's over
mm,
because there's a barrier now,
yeah.
there's a wall.
I
And
think
I'm
I
sure that
think
was there for a long time
I
based
think
on
my
her
ex
behavior. But
started it with a wall based on
yeah,
her previous experiences from her parents.
yeah, I had that too.
Yeah, and
I just eventually somehow got rid of the wall, or she did.
yeah, where some of
I
my
don't know.
early actions added massively to the wall, and then it never went away.
Nah, nah. Hence her resentment that she
Yes.
spoke about in your letter. Have we ever done a deep dive on that on the show?
Which
I don't
aspect?
know. Mm, the path that my marriage took and the path that yours took, and the similarities in the behaviors of the way my wife used to be
I think we've done some
and the
on that.
way that yours still is. We still okay.
Yeah. Yeah, though it might be worth revisiting it with greater clarity at some point.
Yeah. We need to get more topical, I think. Focus more on a single
Hmm.
thing, right? So we always wander all over the place thinking, you know, whatever is most on our mind will be the best conversation. Not that I don't think these aren't good conversations. These
Hmm.
are. But I wonder if, regardless of what we talk about, we can find interesting things to harp on and pull out. And maybe a specific focus set up front would be a better idea.
Hmm. Well, I think there's often a common thread that we don't necessarily, well, not always,
It's
but
emergent.
yeah, a common thread that sort of links the beginning back to the end, and then it all sort of makes sense together in a certain light.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We've
like
sort of just hit that.
the what was it, the cultural decline today, linking that we talked about at the start, linking into the way that uh, what that rabbi said about, and what you also agreed with about true intimacy leaving you more innocent and being sort of purifying, whereas these days the oh, what was it, the temptation of being bad, and how the there's a there's a something missing there, like the idea that sex is bad. It's like
It's a conflation.
there's something
It
wrong in the understanding there.
Yeah, it's modern culture has forgotten the distinction between sexuality and debauchery.
Yeah.
We view all sexuality as equally valid,
Mm.
and therefore, because of that, it doesn't make all sexuality good, which is the way that people who made that confusion wanted it to be. It drags everything down into the muck, saying that all forms of sexuality are nothing more than base pleasures of the flesh, and completely eliminates the potential of the purifying intimacy that you're speaking of.
Because I'm just thinking that gazing into a lover's eyes, like in public, just say sitting beside each other, holding hands, and doing nothing else physical, gazing into a lover's eyes, can be as intense as the most raunchy one night stand, or
Uh,
more, like
no, it's different.
very
It's not
different.
the same.
Yes.
No, it's lust versus love,
Mm.
and it's making love versus having sex.
Mm.
These are not the same things. And for any young man out there who has not yet experienced either, go for the love, for Christ's sake. The other one's not worth it. It's not good for you, for sure. And it's not nearly as satisfying as the culture tells you it is.
But the number of people who there seem to be these days who don't say it much, so you don't hear it that much, but I've heard it enough that it's like, yeah, this is a solid undercurrent of people who achieve great sexual success and feel so empty.
Yeah.
And like it's
It's I have a reason for that.
hmm,
If you use someone else as a temporary partner, the someone else is also using you as a temporary partner.
hmm,
However you have thought of them and have treated them, they've treated you the same.
hmm.
No one wins in that exchange. You can't walk away being like, yeah, I was the, unless you literally have them trailing after you, which is not common.
Even then,
You're treating yourself as disposable
hmm.
as well as disposing of someone else. And then you sit there and go, wow, I feel worthless. It's like, yeah, you just got used.
I guess
or something that doesn't matter about you.
what I'm trying to refine at the moment is what I'm aiming at for myself, because it's rather nebulously defined. Like I want love and intimacy. And there's some things in the vague definition I have of that are like, well, that bit doesn't quite make sense, and that other thing contradicts this, but then it's all it's very vague and not precise. Like what I'm aiming at isn't the physical
Um,
intimacy is a part of it because we are physical creatures, but that
okay,
it's a resultant, not
is the
a
borders okay, I take it the borders are fuzzy and not defined, and that's troublesome. But is the
mm,
core defined?
I think so. It's
Then that's what you aim at,
yeah.
because that's the foundation. Everything else is negotiable, and things that are almost counter to the core, but not quite, can sort of be allowed to exist there as long as that core is intact. That's the defined area that must be satisfied, and everything else around that can be less of that nature, but still follow under the same, like being subservient to that principle.
Hmm. Hmm.
As long as that area is well defined, the rest will fall into place the way that it should in the negotiation between partners.
Hmm.
You shouldn't worry about that outer stuff,
Yeah.
only the core.
Because the core, to try and enunciate it, is. I said try and enunciate, so yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's. I love you and the best in you, and want the best. Well, yeah, that's just quoting Peterson. Want the best for the best in you. It's not a bad definition of it. It's like that sort of. I see you, and I
Does
take you
divine
as
worth,
part of me.
does divine worth sound about right?
Divine worth.
Yeah.
I
Or
see the
divine potential,
I see
maybe.
the divine reflection within you.
Yeah. Aspect, maybe.
That feels no. You can see the divine within someone without having an intimate relationship with them. That's your
Like,
perception. That's your skill of
you can
perceiving.
also, yeah, you can want the best for someone, for the best part of someone, without also being in a relationship.
Hmm. It's the I take you as part of myself.
Yeah, it's the joining.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
bear my soul to you, and you do so for me, and the barrier between us becomes blurry or non-existent. The
Hmm.
barrier without us becomes solid. Like, I don't know where my personality ends and my wife begins. I really don't.
Hmm.
And I like that,
Yeah.
you know. I used to want to spend time with people all the time, and now I don't, because other people don't get me and I don't get them. But I get her. So I can just be there with her and I feel whole. And when it's just me, I don't,
There was something
even in
I
silence.
Yeah, there was something I heard. Was it someone was describing something that an experience that they'd had to make this point, and I think their description makes the point better than I have understood their point. But that they had a intrusive impulse, and they didn't describe what this impulse was, but it was something that horrified them. As in, I would never do this thing, but the impulse to I observed the impulse to do that arise in my mind. And they talked to various people they trusted about it, and not their wife first, because I think they were a bit scared of her reaction because of the nature of the impulse that had arisen. And they then eventually did, well, after a wee while, I think they had a therapist that they had regular meetings with, and they talked to this person about it. I'm not talking about myself, um, but they then talked to their wife about it, and she was a bit scared by that, but was thankful that he had shared that with her. And it's that sort of openness that I think is what I want. The not having to think about how something will be perceived, but trusting that as the person I am, I will continue to be loved. It, there are, of course, ways that you could betray that love through not being that person anymore, through acting contrary to your principles or through some sort of lie and so on. And there are aspects of our nature that incite towards that. How instances of cheating on a romantic partner are there, and so on. But yeah, I think it's that the bearing of souls, the this is me, this is all of me. Not all at once, but I will share my darkest secrets with you.
I
Yeah.
I don't know if you. Weird thing to say. I don't know when in the relationship that comes.
It's definitely not at the start. It takes time. I would.
But maybe it should be. I can't. It's not in the start for me or you, but our situations are not the ideal situations and not the ones we would, advise others for. I would note that when things started turning around for us in a good way was when that switch happened. When we could say a thing that we thought that without it being taken as our opinion. We could say, I had this thought or feeling. And the other person wouldn't react to that.
Hmm.
They would instead put aside their own potential reaction and help the other partner analyze it first.
Hmm.
It there was an extra step became present where a thought was uttered, and instead of it being reacted upon, it was a what does this mean first, rather than it being assumed that's exactly what it meant.
Hmm.
An attempted translation layer, maybe the realization, because we were both working on our own stuff at the time, that we each had problems and trauma, and therefore a lot of our behaviors were broken because of that. And maybe when we did something, we didn't actually mean to. It was because of something else, or something else was going on. It's very vague. I'm trying to
I feel like that.
encapsulate a very large area of phenomenon.
Yeah. I feel like that realization of people acting out of their past experiences rather than out of a certain intent in the present. I feel like that possibly isn't, but should be something everyone knows, that people
Mm,
are complicated and their reasons for action aren't simple.
I think here's a good way of stating it. We stopped defining each other by the things we did and said. Like, if something new happened, say I said something, it was a thought that crossed my mind, and it was weird or wrong in whatever way, it would no longer be taken as a defining statement about me. It would be taken as an anomaly.
Hmm.
We were now one unit, and we looked at the anomaly and went, okay, that was weird, and we probably don't like that. What do we do about it? Rather than before, it was, that's wrong, you're wrong, how dare you kind of scenario. The thoughts and actions, statements that were out of sync were symptomatic of not the person they came from, but something outside the bubble, outside of the relationship. And it was analyzed and worked on until it fit as a piece, and then it was brought inside. So if it was an issue between us, rather than the statement of, I don't like that or that makes me angry, wasn't taken as direct fact or correlation. It was analyzed. And most of the time, it turned out that it was actually something else that was the issue. And once we figured out what it was, we created a new system of rules and then we integrated it. And then we were able to move forward. I think when people first meet each other, they don't know them.
Hmm.
So they have to judge them on every single thing that they do. Perhaps it takes a long time to feel like you know someone well enough that when they do something that's not them or not the best part of them, it's easy to just go, well, that wasn't right.
You need to have,
Do you want to try that again or do we want to figure that out or what?
yeah, you need to have a established view of a person before you can tell if something is an anomaly. Like you have to see a pattern before you can see if something doesn't fit the pattern. So at first, when you meet someone, you're taking in data points and trying to fit them to patterns of behavior, and then use that to predict the behavior of the person you're meeting or getting to know, so that then as you get to know them, you can say, oh, they act like this. That means I can trust them because I know how they'll act in other situations. And the more you get to know someone, the more that can occur. And I think there are aspects we try and not introduce first because they need the other context to show that those other aspects are not defining of the whole system of self. So if someone does get, as pretty much everyone gets, violent thoughts every now and again, commenting about those on a first date is probably a bad idea. But revealing it as a secret, an inner aspect of the self, sometime down the track, is more, once there's more of a context for that, makes more sense. And I feel like that's the process of dating and getting to know someone, building enough of a pattern there so you can say, okay, this is a summary of this person, and as we continue to interact with the world, we continue to grow, and over time, new aspects of this person will be revealed, like they might have a fear of a particular type of spider that wasn't known before to, yeah, whatever. Something new will come up that, oh, I didn't expect that, and then you integrate that. That, yeah, you can't expose your soul to someone during that get to know you phase. You need to get enough of a pattern of pair knowledge built up so that you have something to integrate the new bits into. And then
Oh,
once,
I've just realized my mistake in language.
hmm,
Um, Everything that you're describing can be placed before the point I was talking about.
hmm,
I think the distinction is okay, you have that gathering process, you're bringing in information, you're building a model of the other person. I think the moment I was actually trying to get to was more the entity that is gathering anomalous information is no longer just you.
hmm,
It's you and her, and you're both together analyzing yourselves and each other
hmm,
as one unit, analyzing the two parties and discovering new information about ourselves and then integrating that. You, in your process of analyzing and integrating a model of the other person, you come to a point where your model of your partner is as great as your model of yourself.
yeah,
Um, because your model of yourself isn't actually that big. As anyone who's done any sort of self exploration of the unconscious will really quickly realize, we don't know who we are. And once you hit that point, both people be on the same team and do the same analyzing together to help fix themselves and the partner as if you were one, being more important than either individual. It's that
hmm.
bond above.
Then you need to have the
Yeah. Obviously, that would happen
confidence.
at different speeds for different relationships.
Hmm,
One person might be ready to do that jump way before the other. One person might be too, for whatever reason, to cut off from the other person to be able to make that connection.
hmm.
Hence, potentially your ex.
Yeah, and I think this also links into attachment styles in the sense of the main dysfunctional versions are avoidant and avoidant attachment style and was it over attached? I forget the term, but
Clingy.
yeah, clingy. The and you often end up with people on opposite sides of that in relationships. And for me and my ex, I was the clingy one and she was the avoidant one, although it's often the guy who's the avoidant one and the girl who's the clingy
Hmm.
one.
I was like you, by the way.
Oh,
We were also that way until minor corrections helped it.
hmm. But then once you get, if you can get to a stable attachment style, which is more balanced, I guess, and then you're meeting each other in some form of middle rather than one leading away and one leaning towards,
Like
then
you're not concerned about the other anymore.
yeah, yeah,
I think that's the key. When you're first with someone, you're concerned about them.
yeah. It's like,
Infatuated, but concerned.
hmm, because you don't
And
know
at a
them.
certain point, yeah, at a certain point, it's like, okay, I know you, I trust you. All concerns gone. Whether I'm
Hmm,
with you or not, whether you know my secrets or not,
hmm.
which I think would fit both of this.
Yeah, and then as you grow beyond that point, it's like I trust you to reveal my secrets to you, and you're not gonna sit there and list out all your secrets at once. You might have, as the mood strikes, as they come up,
Yeah,
you share them,
that's what
and
keeps it interesting.
yeah, and if there's something that comes to mind from previous life or childhood that feels like it should be revealed, if you don't reveal that, they'll know.
Yes.
And so you need to have the confidence that they won't run away as a part of yourself that you've tried to hide from and almost view as not part of you comes to light, and then yeah, then you integrate that into the whole that's made up of the two people in the relationship.
Yeah, it's like the best parts of the two of you form a unity, a single person. And then that unity of the best parts is looking at the totality of the actual yous and being like, wow, we need to work on some things here.
Because you'll get to a point where you can see the other in the relationship more clearly than they can see themselves.
Yes. And also the bad parts of yourself are not within the bounds of the unified body that's doing the analyzing.
Hmm.
The unified spirit that's analyzing both parties is only the best spirit of the both parties. It's not very difficult to say.
Well, does the the unified whole? I feel like the we don't have the right words for this.
Mm,
At least not in our dialect. Whatever. The unified whole is in structure like the psyche of a single individual. So it's like a new person. And then a breaking of that is in a emotional sense, a death.
that feels about right.
Yeah, however malformed and self-defeating that unity is, like every friendship has an element of that. But this is
Yeah,
something that's much deeper than that.
yeah. It's I don't know, like a Venn diagram almost.
Hmm. Oh,
The
I'm
parts of you that reach for the other that are mashed together.
I'm thinking
And
more
no,
of it's like
I
two
can see that then.
it's like two if you get two half transparent photos and put the one on top of the other. So then
Yeah,
the
you get an emergent phenomenon as well,
hmm,
like Polaroid. I don't know, is it polarized lenses shifting things? When it lines up the right way, you get
half silvered mirror.
what? Sorry,
A half silvered mirror so you can see through it and a reflection at the same time so you can line up the two and then suddenly you see new patterns of the two images overlaying.
perhaps that's what I was thinking of. I was just thinking of like polarized lenses shifting on 90-degree axis off from each other, sliding from
Hmm.
opaque to not. Is that
Ah, yeah.
wavelengths between the two people can line up in a way that a third thing is created,
Hmm.
or a third phenomenon that wouldn't be either of you on your own. And there's parts of you that remain purely individual from the other and that need their time and their expression.
Hmm.
And as the relationship gets more developed, they get folded in within the relationship.
I feel like the two
Oh,
still.
that's weird.
Hmm?
That's weird. Even the parts of the other person that are defined as needing to be not one of the whole and needing to be individual still feel bounded and defined within the whole.
Sort of like incompatible hobbies are still part of you.
Yeah, I need my personal time
Hmm.
away from you, and during that, I like to do this. The fact that that's an agreed upon thing makes it part of the bond and the unified person,
Hmm.
even though, say, I, if it was her, has nothing to do with what she's doing when she's in her personal time. This is just an example. That would still be bounded within the dual, the, the joint person, perhaps. Even though it's not me, it still feels like it is.
Hmm. It's part of the
Oh, that's
pattern
weird.
that you are part of.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the model of
It's the same
us,
dance. Even if a few steps are taken where you're not looking, it's the same dance.
the model of us has both me and her in it. And it seems that that model is more detailed than the model of myself or herself.
Mm.
And it's the primary model.
Mm. That's an
Yeah,
idea.
yeah. Once upon a time it was I have a model of me and I'm building a model of you. And now I have a model of us. And my model of me as distinct from us is kind of irrelevant because most of it's been consumed and integrated and changed. And so is hers to the point where we have time in which we can just be one part of our model, but we're really not. It's just a part of the larger model
And
that's
if you try and reject that
been
need,
defined.
then you're pushing it outside the boundaries of the couple, the boundaries of the
Yeah,
unified
and,
whole. And
that's where secrets start.
yeah, and that's just like rejecting any aspect of yourself, the return of the repressed. It doesn't go away. It just becomes a dividing line within the personality, which in this case is a personality of two people. So the easiest way for it to be a dividing line is between the two, and then they
Yeah,
separate.
and then you get fractures, partners
Mm.
cheating on or lying to each other.
In order to
The
fulfill
only
that extra
way
need.
is, yeah, the only way is to express all of your darkest feelings and desires to the partner and then negotiate and integrate all of the things that can be and agree on the ones that can't be.
Oh god, I keep having a phrase run through my head of "Oh god, I want that."
It's kind of fascinating. It's kind of fascinating that you as an individual can crave to be assimilated into not being yourself anymore.
I feel like it's part of a greater process.
Oh,
Like,
it is. It is. I'm just sort of making a joke about that, to be honest.
yeah, yeah, but I'm just thinking about how the experience being of the universe being one fundamentally is a relatively common spiritual experience that people have, and that the unifying of two people into one couple, with all those dynamics we've been discussing, is you take that same process. There's a similar aspect to, what is there? A similar aspect in having yourself as part of any larger group, however large that or small that is. Like people who have started choir singing have talked about the joy of feeling like you're part of something that's greater than you are. And I feel like it's the same pattern of many become one, in a
Hmm.
sense. Like this is a
Curious
much
if you
deeper,
have an
complete
instinct for
version.
that,
Mm.
particularly one that can be triggered outside the bonds of relationship. Hmm.
The us and the them.
Yeah, well, that's the dark half of it.
Yeah. Well, there's a larger self made up of, what is it? Egregore, I think is the term for the collective personality of a group. Yeah, so the group, there's a collective personality of a couple in a relationship, and there's a collective personality of uh, a group of individuals, say in a club, and that collective personality has an existence that's semi-independent to the members of that group.
Far more than a couple.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like the if a happy relationship means a happy couple, generally, and an unhappy couple means an unhappy relationship. Although the the two people in it can be each experiencing tough times, but the couple, the unity can still be cohesive and strong and can be facing those challenges with more strength than either of them could on their own. And it can also act to support the member of the couple who is most affected. Yeah, it's the deepest form of this, but I don't think it's a unique pattern in human interaction. I think the more people there are, the less detailed the model can be.
I think it. I think it's got to be an exponential drop off.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't see how, like, even a third person, it's immediately going to deteriorate.
Oh, I agree. Like you get out to the size of a country and it's very, very simple.
Yeah, hence why large scale systems don't function very well.
Yeah. But at on the order of 50 people, you can have a reasonably functional system, I think. 50
This
like
feels it feels different though. This
mm,
this feels like a difference in amount becoming a different in kind. Difference in kind.
yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Because what I'm experiencing is
The whole of yourself being integrated into it?
yes,
Mm.
yes, and also feeling like the super personality, whatever you want to call it, I feel like that, not like me.
Mm.
And she would say the same. Each of us feels like us, not me, and her. Whereas the other systems we're describing, where there's other people involved, it feels more like a emergent property amongst random noise, where things are occurring on an individual level, and then like a mob consciousness
Mm.
emerging. Whereas ours doesn't feel separate from us.
Mm.
It feels, I don't know, one to one is the word that's coming to my mind, but I don't think I have the words for this, which is weird. I never actually thought this deeply about it.
Yeah, I agree. We really
Hmm.
don't have the words to describe it.
That's kind of amazing. I don't know why, but that makes me really happy.
We're at the edge of oh,
Yeah, I feel like we've just sort of walked up to a cliff and gotten like, oh, I don't know where to put my foot now.
but at the same time we're sort of waving over the edge.
Yeah. Yeah, tied ourselves to a rock and just leaning over.
Yeah, yeah. Or we're holding out sticks. Like I think it this is the bit I'm talking about here. Or over a
Yeah, laser
marsh.
pointers in the dark. Like
Yeah.
that. Laser pointers out in the ocean.
Yeah. Like
That way.
you take this
Huh?
concept and you extend it out that far, and then there's something there.
Yeah, but we can't quite touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but it feels like the most important thing I've ever done in my life. The most valuable thing that I have in my life. That's better.
Mm.
I imagine that when my kids get old enough, that I might begin to have something akin to that form. But I don't think it can be the same because it won't be as bi-directional
Mm.
as it is with us.
Mm.
because there's things I can't say to the children,
Yeah.
things I can't, for obvious reasons. Whereas there's quite literally no barrier between my wife and myself,
It's
to
just
the
like
point where it's kind of funny sometimes,
it's like
where a thing will
yeah.
happen and we'll sort of look at the situation and go, wow, I can't believe we allowed that to happen.
We.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. It's not you or me. It never feels like that.
Yeah.
Even when we're making fun of each other. Oh, that's the one. That feels funny to think about that. Us making fun of us pretending to be one of us making fun of the other.
Like self-depreciating humor to yourself.
Yeah, but we both we both are in sync and we both get it and we both know what the next person's gonna say, but it's still funny.
Yeah.
Or do. Yeah, it's like a play, a game.
Yeah.
Like we're kids.
Yeah.
Feels a lot
More
like being a child.
intimacy making you more innocent. Yeah.
Yeah, it does feel a lot like being a child. Um, Obviously there's parts of it that doesn't, but even those parts do feel a little bit more, yeah, like you say, innocent, childlike than they used to be when we started.
With the
Less
kids.
flesh and
Hmm.
more spirit. That's how it feels.
Hmm. Yeah.
Children feel more spiritual than flesh. That's why we think that.
Um, Also on the difference between the relationship between you and your wife and the two of you and your kids, I wonder if it's equivalent to gestation, like pregnancy. You have the personality of the couple sheltering and nurturing and helping to grow these young personalities inside who will then go off into the world separately while maintaining some sort of link, much like a mother gestates the baby and through pregnancy and then gives birth, and then they are then a separate being in the physical sense, but there's still care and breastfeeding and so on, and that link gets
Hmm.
more separated with time.
You're not trying to integrate them the
Mm,
same way. You're trying,
you're feeding them.
yeah, you're trying to be the boundary around their border definition.
Mm,
You're not trying to put yourself within that boundary. So back to the analogy before, wife and us, I feel like the boundary of me is outside me and her,
mm,
not between us. Whereas with the children, it would feel like we've created a circle in the middle
mm,
where the child goes, and they can grow and bump into those walls, and then define themselves there through interactions with us, but they're sheltered. They're Yeah, develop you're not trying to develop them and integrate them and to become a unit in the same way that you already are. You're trying to develop them as a separate entity, to develop them as an independent spirit who can then go out and integrate with someone else.
mm,
Because how can you integrate yourself with someone else before you even know what yourself is? Because children for sure do not know who they are. They're just running around every single direction until they sort of like something.
I'm just thinking of how it relates to the archetype of the devouring mother, because that's
That sounds like someone who would try to create that one-to-one bounded relationship, but with the child and not the partner,
mm,
which would make sense why it has that sexual connotation in the archetype.
mm. So sexual as a concept isn't just the physical act, that's almost the dimmest reflection of it. It's
Yeah, there's uh, what would you say? The mythology? It's not the right word. Maybe it is. The way sexuality is used to represent different ideas in mythology and in psychology and in archetypal thinking or religious thinking is ridiculously broad and really nowhere near as simple or disgusting as modern people seem to think.
mm.
Um, I don't think I know enough about that to comment on it other than saying that truly. I mean, I could take a wild stab, but I'd probably make a fool of myself.
So I'm just thinking that it's unity of duality, and that has a more obvious manifestation on the physical, but
That's good. I like that.
yeah, on the various levels of the self, you can have the duality. I'm just thinking of the schema of, if that's the right word, of energy bodies that I've seen sort of laid out in certain sources and seeing how it aligns with that, that the integration of the duality on the, say, chi level, to use that word for it, um, it it's in longer lasting in time and distance than on the physical, and the same on the emotional level, where it's possibly near constant, and then on the mental level of abstract representations, you're conceiving of yourself as no different, as in not a separate entity to your wife. So there it's possibly just constant once a certain depth of relationship is achieved. So if that's the base pattern of sexuality, the unity of duality, then there's, through that lens, a whole lot of mythology. I'm just thinking about Zeus and how he would sleep around all the time. There's a whole lot of that that could be viewed through that lens, which gets very interesting.
Mm. Sounds like you have a bit of philosophizing to do on your spare time.
There's already quite a full list on that one, but
Okay,
yeah.
good point. I got
Oh,
that too.
I've had a voice in the back of my head saying, I want that so much in various ways, quite a few times.
I never thought I would want that until I got it. Which is funny because I always had immense desire for romantic involvement ever since I was a child. I always thought of it as sort of abandonment issues with my mother, which is why I was quite surprised to hear you say that you're also the, what do you call it, attachment type,
Hmm.
whatever, over attached. Because I saw it as a symptom of my, you know, not really having family there for me kind of thing as a kid.
Anxious attachment, that's it. Anxious and
Yeah, that sounds
avoidant
right.
attachment styles. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear you say that. It's interesting to hear myself say all those things and say that I like it, because there was a time when there was, no one's company I loved more than mine, which is still to a large extent true, just with a notable exception. Um,
Mm.
funny that. I don't know. I think, yeah, I'm burning myself at this point. I need to call it. I'm getting real tired and losing my train of thought, but that was good.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I got some things to think about and maybe come back with next time.
It's helped me personally get a better target to aim at, or a better idea of what I'm aiming at for and from a relationship.
Yeah. I gotta go ask some questions to my wife and see if she agrees with all of this now.
Yeah.
Which I know what she's gonna say. I'm
But you
gonna do it
still,
anyway because she'll find it interesting.
yeah, yeah, still gotta play your part in the dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And love it.
Oh, I do. It's the greatest feeling ever.
Mm.
Comfort and silence is great. That's something that's amazing. When you're with a person, you don't need to say anything. You can
Mm.
just be there with them, but still feel like you're alone. That's the coolest feeling.
Mm.
Alone, alone with company. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anyone else had that feeling, but when I was younger and alone a lot, I loved the feeling of being alone so much because there was the no judgment thing. But I also wanted to share that feeling with someone else because I loved it so much.
Mm.
And it feels like I get to do that now all the time.
I wonder if it's like uh, when you're alone, you are one whole.
Yes.
But
There's
now,
no outside
yeah, and
pushing.
unless you're someone who um, seriously needs other people around them, and for them, okay, that feeling wouldn't really apply. But
They need
to,
that because they don't have stability at the borders. Therefore, they're
mm,
not comfortable being alone.
yeah,
A person who desperately needs others around, what they desperately need is no one else around so they can figure out their shit.
mm.
Um, you got to define your own borders. Otherwise, you're not healthy.
But then you integrate with a relationship. Well, that's an interesting way to phrase it. You're integrating with the relationship, not integrating with the other person, because that's almost like you're becoming them. It's like you're both becoming the relationship rather than
Yes,
yeah, yeah. So you become yeah,
us.
yeah, an I made of two people.
Yes, yes. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. So it's that same wholeness. It's the benefit of the solitary wholeness and of togetherness.
Best of both worlds. That sounds nice. I think I'm going to go do that now.
Yeah, you do that, and yeah, if anyone ever listens to this, and hopefully they find it as interesting as we did.
Yeah. Wow, that's the case for all of these, isn't it? We're
Yeah,
doing pretty well. I think we're 26 or 27 strong now, which is nice. Getting
yeah,
up there.
yeah.
So we'll just keep plucking along, and I might see you, well, for us tomorrow, maybe. We'll see how it goes.
Yep,
For everyone else, we'll see you next week.
yep. See ya.
Bye.